We're fortunate to have Dr. Scott Brun with us. He's Vice President of Clinical Development at AbbVie. He has a whole list of responsibilities, which I'm going to let him cover. And he is coming to you with a different perspective of medicine from a different place. So, Scott, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, Ricky.
Did you hear?
My pleasure. Can everybody see and hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Well, first of all, my apologies that I can't be there with you in person. I am live from the northern suburbs, where I'm sure many of you hail from, just a couple miles away from AbbVie headquarters. And again, I'm sorry that a work commitment tomorrow prevented me from coming down to Urbana-Champaign. Certainly, I always enjoy visiting my alma mater. So, what I thought I'd do this evening is tell you a little bit about myself, my pathway in medicine, albeit I'm not going to be able to give you specific tips or hints about how to go about applying to medical school, because I have to admit my experience is somewhat dated, having started medical school back in 1989. What I'd like to do, though, is to give you a sense of just how versatile the medical degree can be. As a physician, there are a tremendous number of career opportunities available to you, and I'd like to give you a bit of a view into my own drug development, for which I've been participating almost 17 years now. But first of all, a little bit about me. So I grew up in a town called Libertyville, and I actually live very close to there now. It's about 40 miles north of Chicago. Went through public high school, and all the time was thinking that I was interested in medicine. I was always very fond of science, solving problems, trying to learn how animals and people's bodies worked. And certainly I also really enjoyed interacting with people. And I made the decision to go to the University of Illinois, based on large part on its very strong reputation, the fact that certainly I had a number of friends that were going to be going there as well, and the value for the money aspect. Certainly, as I was thinking about medical school, I was mindful of the potential downstream cost, and certainly I couldn't think of a better, again, value for my educational dollar, which I think is still certainly true today. So when I started at Illinois, I began in a discipline called ceramic engineering, which is now referred to as material science. What I was hoping to do was to be able to combine biology and materials through studying and developing bioimplant materials. Well, as it turns out, after spending 2 years in an engineering curriculum, I found that while certain departments have different sets of emphasis, at Illinois, what I was thinking of pursuing in the area of biomaterials wasn't something that was a very active area of research. And so at that time, I made the decision to switch over to biochemistry. Again, I like quantitative science. I like the whole concept of solving problems, as you do in biochemistry, trying to tease out different pathways that are critical to life functions. Again, all the time thinking that I was going to go to medical school. When I was at Illinois, I participated in different activities ranging from lab research as an undergraduate in the School of Molecular and Cell Biology. I also liked to write and eventually became editor of an engineering magazine called the Illinois Technograph. I have no idea, does it still exist to this?
Yes, it does.
Well, bravo. Okay, so I didn't manage to kill it in my time there. So that's a very good thing. And I certainly think the diversity of experience that I had at Illinois, being involved, not only in hard sciences, but via some of the classes I took, Renaissance art and literature, something I was interested and remain interested in to this day. My experience on the Technograph. I think really helped me with regard to my medical school application. Certainly, your prior speaker was making the point about the importance of references, and certainly, that was true in my day as well. And having worked with my lab advisor and faculty advisors on the magazine, these are people who I really knew and worked with very closely outside of the context of classes. I made the decision to apply to a single early decision program at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. And I was fortunate enough to be accepted into that program at the end of my junior year, which really prevented a pressure off of me because I knew where I was going to be going to medical school in my senior year, and I didn't have to be worried about it. I could really, enjoy my classes and my experiences. I'll have to say, when I initially went to East Baltimore, it was a bit eye-opening. It is certainly a very urban setting. Those of you who may watch things like The Wire, it is very true to the experiences that you have in East Baltimore. And having grown up again in the North Shore suburbs and then spent time in Urbana-Champaign, it was a very different experience for me. The good thing is my first year I lived in the dorm with 90% of the medical students, and so we all got to know each other and really formed a tight camaraderie there. First year medical school certainly did provide some time to get out to see Baltimore. I'm not going to say it was easy, but the real work began down the line when you started getting into your second, third, and fourth years and going into the clinical work, where you become quite busy and you're taking call. It's a somewhat different experience nowadays. There are newer, more integrated curriculum. I went through a very traditional one where you do your anatomy, your microbiology, and then in your second year you learn about pathophysiology, how disease affects the body, and then go to the clinic. I think now many programs get you exposed to patients much earlier and try to blend all these different disciplines together as opposed to running through them sequentially. So I think that is definitely a difference, and I would say an improvement in the overall state of the education. Certainly, the other thing have to do with some work restrictions. I mean, when we went through, you could be in the hospital 36, 39 hours. Certainly, when I went through my residency training. That was very grueling. You certainly learned a great deal, and it makes it very easy for me to do my job now because, frankly, my hardest days, even if I'm in the office for 13 hours and then I have to go give a talk, it's kind of child's play compared to what I, was exposed to in the hospital. In medical school, you have to decide what specialty you want to pursue, and that, just like so many of life's choices, can be driven by the people that you meet and the people that you work with. And at Johns Hopkins, ophthalmology is a preeminent specialty. And there were a couple of young faculty members that when I did my ophthalmology rotation, I got very, very close to and decided to do some research with them. I liked ophthalmology for several reasons. Again, it was very quantitative. You have to learn about the science of optics, the science and use of lasers in the treatment of disease, both medically and surgically. And you see what you get. You can look in the back of the eye and can get a good idea of both local and systemic diagnoses. The saying is the eye is the window to the soul, and that is certainly the case. And so, as a consequence of that experience, I decided to go into ophthalmology. The way things work, and I think still work now, is you go through a match process and you rank your residencies. I actually put first the Massachusetts Eye and Ear Infirmary, which is a Harvard-affiliated hospital up in Boston. My mentors had worked there as well, and I was fortunate enough to get that as my first choice. I did a year of internal medicine at a local hospital in Baltimore because my new wife had some schooling she had to finish up with, and then went up to Boston. With regard to ophthalmology, again, it was a tremendous 3-year experience. Again, a great combination of medicine as well as surgery. Intraocular surgery was a tremendous experience for me, learning how to remove cataracts, how to deal with detached retinas. But perhaps one of the most telling things that I still remember, and I'll date myself somewhat, is when I was going through, it was before we had highly effective drugs for patients afflicted with HIV infection. And this is going to become relevant as I walk you through my career. But certainly there were a number of so-called opportunistic infections, something called CMV retinitis, where I saw a lot of HIV patients with that blinding condition, and there was very little that we could do for them. And that in part made me start to think about what exactly does medicine mean beyond just the laying on of hands to an individual patient. Being at the Massachusetts Eye and Ear Infirmary, like at Hopkins, it was a very research-intensive facility. And one of the things I needed to do when I was finishing up my training is figuring out what do I want to do next in my life. I mean, the most traditional thing you do would be either to go out into practice, continue on into further subspecialty training into retina, corneal transplantation, and then go on to potentially an academic track. But I was interested in some experience I'd had from colleagues and friends who had actually moved into the pharmaceutical industry. And what they liked about it was the fact that you had the ability to do research on a very large scale on very impactful problems. Essentially, what you're trying to do is to discover and develop medicines in order to target very specific diseases. And what they liked is, at a very young age, they were able to be involved in designing, analyzing, and interpreting these multinational clinical trials, which in an academic environment, certainly you will get those types of opportunities, but if you're looking to be involved in large-scale clinical research, it will likely take you a little bit longer. And so I was intrigued and thought, is this something I'd like to explore? And being from Libertyville, I was aware of Abbott Laboratories, which is a large diversified healthcare company up where I live. And what I'd become aware of when I was finishing up my residency is that they were looking to begin what was called a physician development program, really a mini fellowship in pharmaceutical medicine. And they were also looking for an ophthalmologist to try to develop some new medications targeting age-related eye diseases, and to use some cancer medications for a dual purpose to target those diseases as well. And so I made the decision to make this very large leap. It was somewhat scary. I think many of my professors and advisors were somewhat surprised that I'd made this decision to move off of the traditional track. But my thought was, why don't I give this a try? I can always go back into a fellowship if this doesn't work out. And here I am 17 years later. I have to say I tremendously enjoy the job that I have. And when you hear about R&D, research and development, I am responsible for development at AbbVie. AbbVie is a spin-off from Abbott Laboratories. It is a company of approximately 25,000 employees located around the world that is focused on the discovery and development of specialty pharmaceuticals to treat predominantly life-threatening diseases. And in my current responsibility, I oversee an organization of 1,600 people with several hundred physicians, other PhD scientists who work in clinical pharmacology, really determining how the body and how the body affects drugs. We have a large 1,000-person organization referred to as clinical operations, that are the people who really are responsible for the nuts and bolts of making our clinical trials happen. And really, the way my job works is we will become responsible for compounds coming out of the laboratory, and it's our responsibility to take them to their full potential, to study them in human volunteers, both healthy and with disease, and to determine, do they work? Are they safe? And really work across a number of different phases of development. Phase 1, where you start in healthy volunteers to get a sense of can the drug be tolerated? Can the drug be absorbed by the body? How does it affect certain biologic markers that might be indicative of whether or not it's going to work in disease? You then move into phase 2 in small numbers of patients to see if you get a glimmer of activity, and then into large phase 3 trials. You then work with regulatory agencies around the world, like the FDA or the EMA, the equivalent in Europe, in order to work with them to demonstrate that you've established efficacy and safety and can move forward with making the drug available on the market. I made this sound somewhat simple, but I have to tell you, when I went through medical school, I took for granted prescription, and a patient could go to the pharmacy and there'd be a pill in a bottle, and they'd take that pill and that it would work. I have to tell you, the more I do this, the more surprised I am that we actually have as many drugs available as we do. It takes thousands of people from just a score of different disciplines, ranging from pathologists to chemists, regulatory scientists, physicians, operations experts. And there are so many places that the process can run awry. I mean, if you like solving problems, the pharmaceutical industry is for you. Not a day goes by without the challenge that we have to creatively adapt to. But I think most importantly, as a physician in the pharmaceutical industry, my job is somewhat similar to the physicians who are treating patients. You've heard the credo, first, do no harm. Patient safety has to be first and foremost in what we do. And it's a pretty solemn responsibility when you've got a person who's volunteering to be in a study and you're giving a chemical compound to this person for the very first time. You want to make sure that you've done all your homework and that you've done everything possible to keep those individuals safe. And unexpected things can happen in these trials. You need to be vigilant. You need to be able to respond to them. And first and foremost, do what's right for the individuals who are involved in your trials. That being said, progress can't be made without taking on a certain level of risk. I've been fortunate in programs that I've worked on that we've been able to find a good level of benefit risk. When I first started at the company as a medical director, designing and running clinical trials, I worked on an HIV drug, which again kind of harked back to some of the patients I cared for during my ophthalmology residency. And this was a time right after the first wave of active drugs. You may have, some of you heard of the HIV protease inhibitors or the HIV antiviral cocktail. The first wave of these had just come out. And we thought, oh, this is going to be the be-all, end-all, the solution to this plague. But then we started realizing that these first-generation drugs are very fragile, and resistance would come up, and they'd only work so long. They were also very hard to take. 16, 20 pills taken 3 times a day with food, very hard side effects. And I was very fortunate to work on a drug called Calitra, which is much more tolerable, much fewer pills, and had activity against resistant virus. And this drug was approved back in the year 2000, and it's still available for patients today. And it was tremendously exciting to be able to work on that. Our work was recognized by a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine. But again, I think when I think about the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of patients that have been touched by that drug, it certainly provided me a much broader scope than I would have ever had in individual medical practice. But that being said, the teams work very closely with the physicians who do care for those patients. Because if it weren't for those physicians, our drugs would sit on shelves and wouldn't be used effectively, and frankly, they never would have been developed because we work with investigators, actual clinicians at major universities or private practice who work with us to actually do this particular research. I like my job because I get to be exposed to a diverse array of people. So in my current responsibilities, I have to manage a very large group of people. I have 11 people reporting directly to me, but again, 1,600 located around the world. I've got a budget that certainly ranges well over $1 billion with a B dollars, and you want to make sure that you're using that money responsibly. I have to tell you though, within drug development, you have to be very patient. 9 out of 10 things that we work on are not going to work. They're going to fail and go nowhere. I spent 3 years of my life on what I thought would be a promising antibiotic, and it didn't work. And that was the end of it. What I took from that, though, is I learned a number of important lessons in drug development, and frankly, I thought we did some very good clinical trials that allow us to determine that the drug wasn't going to be what we hoped it would be at the phase 2 stage before we went into a very large phase 3 trial, exposed a number of patients to a drug that, again, didn't reach its full potential, and potentially spent hundreds of millions of dollars. So you've really, like I said, got to be into delayed gratification, which, potential medical students, I guess that's part of your vocabulary already. But work, it's tremendous. Just this week, my company submitted to the FDA a new 3-drug regimen for the treatment of hepatitis C virus that is extremely effective, curing over 90% of patients without the use of the more toxic components that were available that were required for use, as of the past few years and months. And this is the culmination of over a decade of work that I started out as a project director. It's been great to shepherd this through as I've gone through different levels of responsibility within the corporation. But in my current role, I work with public relations. I do a fair amount of interview. I work with investor relations to talk to people who are considering investing money in AbbVie and giving them a sense of the promise of our pharmaceutical pipeline. I work with health economists. I work with people on our commercial side who are responsible for the marketing and sales of medications. And so, I mean, it's exciting. Every day is a little bit different. I've got to be a little bit of a chameleon. I communicate very differently with a PhD chemist or an endocrinologist than I do a reporter for the Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg. But it's very fulfilling for me. And I guess, my message to you would be just remember that a degree in the health sciences can open many doors for you, and be open to those various doors. I didn't think I was going to be doing this when I started medical school. And I'm certainly not trying to recruit you guys into the pharmaceutical industry. I think you're going onto a noble pathway. Most of you will be treating patients, and I think that's a wonderful thing. But certainly, with regard to what I do, there are positions in health policy, certainly within the financial industry, helping investors again make decisions in terms of what are the most promising therapies to invest in to make sure that they do become the medicines of tomorrow. You've got a lot of opportunities in front of you with this degree. So let me tell you, just stick with it. The training can be rigorous, but it's It's a fascinating time. You will be given privileges of intimacy in terms of what you're able to learn about patients, how you're able to help patients, but no other profession is going to afford you. So, Rick, I don't know if I went way over my time here.
You're good. What I wanted to know is, so you don't have to stick around, if you'll entertain questions now, and then we'll get on with our other speakers, and that way.
You know what? Maybe to courtesy to the other speakers, if the plan is to do all the questions at the end,
right.
I can wait. Why don't we let the other speakers go, and I'm happy to stay on as part of a panel.
Great, fantastic. And then we're going to FaceTime you during dinner so you can vicariously.
Sounds good. I'll hope you got something appetizing.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thanks for your attention, everybody, and thanks for taking your